Police Constable Simon Reed was part of the Thin Blue Line working out of the Cambridgeshire Police Station in the UK, and his great weakness was Krispy Kreme donuts, which was amazing over there because you can buy them in the supermarkets. Here we can't, I don't think, yet, but over there you could. And I guess, yeah, there they are. I guess every cliche about policemen and donuts kind of rings true in the story. Who knew? But unfortunately, his love for donuts caused him to become a criminal. Because one day in the supermarket, PC Reed got a hankering for some of them Krispy Kremes, but was disinclined to pay the full price. And so what he did, very craftily, was he went to the veggie section, got one of those bags, and got a couple of carrots and put them in the bag. And then in the UK, you scan them there and get a barcode. And so he got the barcode for these carrots and took them to the self-help kiosk, along with his tray of Krispy Kreme donuts. And he scanned the carrots as if they were the donuts. And so what happened was he ended up purchasing a large tray of Krispy Kreme donuts that would have cost more than $19 for less than 20 cents. He got away with it until he didn't. He got his donuts, but he also got caught. And his superiors thought this probably wasn't such a good look for a policeman to be robbing. And so he lost a job, all for some donuts. He had crossed a line that should not have been crossed. And I wonder if you've ever drawn a line in the sand, to use that terminology, made a commitment. Come hell or high water, you will not break this. And I'm wondering, is the line still there? Or has it been crossed? Have the winds and waves of life washed it all away? That line in the sand. Well, a man called Joshua knew all about lines. He knew all about lines. And on this day, what happened was that really it was all about drawing a line. He stood on this day, a very old man. He was possibly a little more bent than he used to be. His hands may have had age spots on them, perhaps. His face was wrinkled, no doubt. But he stood with an authority because he was the leader of this people. He led Israel since Moses' death into the promised land. And now he stood with one purpose: to draw a line in the sand, so to speak. With death breathing down his neck, he urgently begins to talk. And he recounts all the things that God has done for them, all the way he has been faithful to them, leading them through the wilderness, defeating the Egyptians before that, bringing them into the promised land, the land of promise. And he pleads with them, and he entreats them, and he persuades and he encourages them. And finally, he challenges them with every bit of the inspiration of William Wallace and Braveheart and maybe more. He says these words: "Now fear the Lord and serve him with faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day who you're going to serve. Are you going to serve the gods your ancestors did beyond the Euphrates back there? Or the gods of the Amorites up there? But as for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord." And the response of the crowd, I mean, just imagine it. A line has been drawn in the sand. There's clarity there. Wow. And the response from the crowd is amazing. It is explosive. It is ardent. It is urgent. And with one heart and one voice, they say, "No, we will serve the Lord. We will obey our God." The line had been drawn, and they knew where they were going to sit, on which side of the line they would invest themselves. Question is, I guess, would they toe the line as time went on? And the early signs look pretty good, because it says in Joshua 24:31 that Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. But the passage kind of gets me thinking. You see, Joshua saw the world very clearly, didn't he? There was a line, and on one side stands God, Yahweh, I guess, and on the other side stands the nations' gods. And life was divided. Okay, Israel, where are you going to be? Where are you going to sit? Would the people of God have interaction with the other nations? Absolutely they would, no question there. But in some very real ways, there was a line of difference, wasn't there? There was a line that should never be crossed. And I guess today we too live as the people of God. And yes, we are to be a blessing to the world. We are to be those who live for the benefit of the world, but we are also to be those who have a line of difference, don't we? We are called in some ways to be separate. Or is there no dividing line anymore? And if there is still a dividing line, what is it? What is the line that followers of Jesus should not cross? Is it maybe belief? Is that what the line is? We believe some stuff that others don't believe, maybe. But then you think of Joshua and you think, was it only belief? Would Jesus say it's just what you think? Surely there has to be outworkings, don't there? So belief doesn't really cut it, I don't think. Is it morality? Is that the dividing line? But haven't we seen an erosion of morality over the years? I mean, think back 2 or 3 generations. Certain parts of the church would not dance. They would not play cards. They would not be seen in a dance hall. They would not be seen gambling. Lotto tickets were out. They would not go to the flicks, the cinema. It was the den of iniquity. That was only 2 or 3 generations ago. They wouldn't drink alcohol. They wouldn't divorce. They wouldn't live together unmarried. Now, is there actually really any great difference between a follower of Jesus' morality and that of the world? Is it morality? Well, if it's not morality, is it the practices, the habits, the way we live our life? You know, we go to church, we read our Bibles, we share our faith. Or do we? De-churching is an on-trend trend at the moment. In fact, deconversion is an on-trend trend. Bible reading? 44.1%, what's the stats? The average Christian has 4.1 Bibles in their home. And around about 20% actually read them. Christians have around about 4.1 Bibles in their home on average, and they read them. 80% don't even read them. So is it Bible reading? What about sharing our faith? When was the last time you shared your faith? Not just in your actions, but in your words. Do you know that millennials, 47% of millennials would absolutely refuse to share their faith? It's not, we're a bit scared about it. It's not that, oh, yeah, I should do it, but I don't really feel qualified. 47% of millennials refuse to share their faith. So it's not belief and it's not morality, and actually our practices aren't actually that different from anyone else. What is the dividing line? It begins to look a little bit transparent, doesn't it, our line? And we come back to the question, does Jesus call his followers to difference? And if yes, then what is the difference? Really? And if we don't know what the difference is, how can we live it? Now, I am not going to tell you what this dividing line is, but I want you to think about it in the week ahead. Okay, this is your homework. What is the dividing line if you think there is one? Now, the problem with Joshua and the people of Israel is they had a drawn line, which is all good. But then fast forward, and it became a bit of a smudged line. They started out with a lot of clarity. It was a bold line, firm, on a white background. People knew what it was standing for. They would reject the gods of the lands they were going into, and they would worship the God Yahweh only. And they would ensure that they did that by driving out the peoples of the land completely. That was the deal. No peace treaties, no compromise, no backroom deals. Because God had said this, do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you are going, or they will be a snare among you. So God is saying you have to completely push them out of the land. No half measures, no compromise. And we look at that with our Western 20th century, 21st century eyes and go, that's not very peaceful, is it? First Nation people. But the background here is this. God had promised Abraham years before, you and your descendants will have this land. But the sin of its people has not yet reached a certain level. I am going to give them time to change. And for 600 years, God waited. But instead of getting better, the people of this land got worse. And so by the time that Israel comes into this land, they are sacrificing their kids. They are burning their children to the god Molech. I think Oranga Tamariki would agree with God that enough was enough. And so God said, enough. Their sin has reached a level I cannot tolerate anymore. You are to go in there and you are to push them out completely, because if you do not, then they will become to you a trap. Fast forward to the book of Judges. And what do we find? Well, in chapter 1, we find the tribes of Israel beginning to do what God had told them to do through Joshua. to battle, to win possession of the land. But as you read, you start to get a bit uneasy because it seems the line is getting a bit sort of smudged a bit. Yes, the tribes go out and they try and push these people out, but they don't go all out. And we hear the repeating phrase as you read through chapters 1. The Benjamites did not drive out the Jebusites. Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh, did not drive out the people of Bethshan or Tanakh or Dor. When Israel became strong, they pressed them into forced labor, but never drove them out completely. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer. Nor did Zebulun drive out the Canaanites, so they lived amongst them. Nor did Asher drive out those living in Acco. Neither did Naphtali drive out those living in Beth Shemesh. So they went so far, but they didn't go all the way. They had a partial obedience. A partial obedience. The job was too hard to go all the way. And so they kind of obeyed God this much instead of this much. And that partial obedience is something I think that I'm certainly guilty of at times, and I think we probably all are. You know, I'll follow God 70% today. But you know what? Some things cannot be done incompletely. You can't be a little bit pregnant, can you? If we settle for 70%, then 1.4 million Kiwis won't get the Pfizer vaccine. If we settle for 99%, we would have unsafe drinking water for 3.5 days every year. Medical teams would have dropped 570 babies on the floor after giving birth. You know, some things we just have to get right, don't we? And the writer of Judges does a really interesting thing here. If this was a movie, this would be the flashback scene. He takes us back again to that moment where Joshua stood up and drew a line in the sand. And he says this in chapter 2, verse 6. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things that the Lord had done for Israel. But the author here, it's like he's reminding us that some things you simply have to get right. Because what happens next? Verse 10. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. And then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the people around them. You see what's happening? The line's getting all smudged here. And because it's all smudged, the line's actually being crossed. A line has been crossed because the line had been forgotten. Earlier this year, we heard that in the last 5 years in Auckland, bus drivers have been issued 10,500 speeding tickets. They've run 500 red lights. And they probably justified it, you know. I've got to get my schedule right. I've got to get on time, or else there'll be repercussions. And they kind of blurred the line a bit, forgetting that actually, no, the road rules are not a suggestion. They're a command, aren't they? What about us? Has God given us instructions in the Bible? Or has he given us commandments? Let me say that again. Has God given us suggestions in the Bible? Or has he given us commandments? I think often I treat them as suggestions. You know, God, is Monday morning. I'm feeling smashed. It's been a big weekend. Partying all night long. Haven't had my coffee yet. If it's okay with you, I'm just going to ignore your instructions for today. Try to pick up them tomorrow. I'll feel better then. I'll be a Christian on Tuesday. You're a good fella. I'm sure you understand. I'm going to go for 70% obedience today. Is that all right? But is the Bible a set of suggestions? Or does it actually come from a king who says, this is my edict? I think we sometimes treat Jesus as a self-help guru and his book as a self-help book. No, he is king, isn't he? They are not suggestions. There are lines. Sometimes I don't like the lines. Sometimes I wish the lines weren't there. But they come from the king. They are his lines. I cannot rub them out. And what had happened, of course, with the people of Israel is they'd so smudged the lines and so crossed the lines that the whole line had been distorted and twisted. It had curved in on itself and become a circle, if you like. And in verse 11 of chapter 2, we read that the author sets up a cycle that is going to be there all the way through the book. The people would reject God, this stuff. And God would let them suffer the consequences of this stuff. And they'd suffer, and it would be bad, and it would be horrible and ugly, and they'd cry out to God and say, God, help us, in desperation. And God would send them a person who was God's man or woman to rescue them from their dilemma. And the person would do mighty things, and they would be rescued, and then they'd go back to Monday morning again and say, God, I had a pretty smashed weekend. I don't really want to do this. And those bowels look pretty attractive. And I'd go back and do it all over again, and the cycle would start again and again and again. I was once walking along a footpath in Wellington when I saw a big station wagon on the side of the road, parked on the side of the road, start pulling out. And I thought, that's not a big deal. That's what cars do. But something about it was just a little bit off. And so I looked back at the station wagon, and I could see no driver as it was driving down the road. I thought, oh no, someone's left the handbrake off. And they had. And I had a small window of time to figure out, what do I do? What do I do? I couldn't go get my car and try and nudge in front of it. No time. And so I thought, I just can't do anything but run. And so I ran to the front of the station wagon. As it was picking up speed going down the road. And I did my Superman thing. I got my arms out. I got my legs braced. And I pushed against the bonnet. And I was going back, all the way, doing my muscles, flabbiness in full gear. And it wasn't moving fast to that point, but even so, it was momentum. The inertia of this thing was incredible. It was only going this sort of fast, but down a hill with a bit of a back speed, it was difficult. And I might not be very strong as well. I don't know. But finally, I managed to put enough energy into it to kind of just stop it. And the fence post it smashed into helped as well. And it kind of stopped there without crashing in, which is fantastic. Saved probably a baby, maybe, in the front window of the house. I don't know. I could have been a hero. I don't know what I saved. Didn't save the fence. But the momentum of this thing was huge. Momentum is a powerful, powerful thing. And in Judges, we find that this circle, so the lines become a circle. Where's my thingy? The line has become a circle. It's so twisted now. There's obedience, but then there's disobedience. There's suffering, crying out to God. God sends a rescuer, and he rescues. And then finally there's obedience. And then it just starts all over again, going around and round and round throughout the whole book. But the momentum of it is not just linear. We find it's actually getting worse and worse. Instead of having a circle, what we actually have It's a spiral. It's getting worse and worse and worse all the way through the book. They're not going back to the same place. They're reaching it at a lower level. And all the way through, we have the heroes becoming less and less heroic until we reach Samson, who's like an absolute rotter. And we have the nation not coming back to a time of peace. By the end of the story, they're in civil war. The whole thing is anarchic. And it's falling to pieces. Because the momentum of this was so great that it just got worse and worse and worse. Judges 2, verse 19. When the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshipping them. There was a trend line, if you like, that was going down and down and down. And so that, my friends, is the book of Judges. What's the bottom line? We've had a drawn line, we've had a smudged line, we've had a crossed line, we've had a trend line. What's the bottom line? Here's your homework. What is the line? What is it that God wants you to stand for? What is your point of difference, to use business speak? What does God want you to stand against? Because to stand for something means to stand against the opposite. What is the line? What does God want you to stand for and against? Secondly, are you treating God's commands as suggestions? That's a homework question for you as well. Are you treating God's commands as suggestions? And thirdly, where is the momentum of your decisions taking you? Where is the momentum of your decisions taking you? Okay? What is the line? Are you treating the line as a suggestion or a command? Where is the momentum of your decisions taking you? Okay? And we're going to get into the stories next week of this and see what God has to say through it. Shall we pray? Deeply, deeply grateful, God, to you that you did not just give us in your message to us, your word, your love letter, your instruction book, your commands, Lord, illustrations of people who got it right, but stories too of those who got it wrong. May we learn, Lord, things that you would have us learn, that we may more clearly understand what it is to be your people in this world, for the glory of Christ whom we serve. Amen.